Well, I first became interested professionally in the UFO subject when I was working for the BBC in England. I was doing radio programs for the BBC, and I was doing sort of fringe programs for science and what have you, and I was asked by the producers to interview some authors, American authors, who were coming to London to promote their books. Two of those authors were Dr. Jacobs and Dr. Mack, and they had written extensively about the abduction phenomenon. I was very skeptical. I mean, I was just thought, well, why am I doing this interview? It's kind of like, this is ridiculous. I don't believe in this sort of stuff. But when I went along to interview Dr. Mack especially, I was convinced fairly quickly that he was a man of great intelligence, of great education, who would not really be involved in a subject like this unless it was for real, or there was certainly something to it. So I did a lot of research around the subject and became quite fascinated in it from that point on. I was asked to make a program for the BBC about a sort of military insider who was a bit of a whistleblower, and he had stuff to talk about the UFO subject. I was commissioned to make the program. I went up there, did the interview, came back, cut the program together for broadcast the next day, and the producer said, we're not going to air this program. So I said, why not? And she said, well, I don't believe in little green men. And I said, well, okay, so that's your personal belief, but as a journalist, surely that's got nothing to do with it. I mean, this is his testimony, his story, and your personal position on it shouldn't influence whether the story comes out. But that's what happened. So that was my first experience of sort of facing sort of internal censorship within the media about the UFO subject. So I kind of got really rather annoyed about that and decided that at some point in the future I would like to get this information out through mainstream media. I think what we tried to do with Out of the Blue was make a film that could be shown to a skeptic, somebody who didn't believe in the UFO subject, and for them to come away thinking there's something to it. Or even more strongly to say, this is definitely going on. And I think on both counts we succeeded. Journalists themselves don't want to become involved in a subject they think is already surrounded by ridicule. They don't want to tarnish their reputations as journalists because of that. So it's a question of education. Journalists don't know very much about the UFO subject, only what they've received through the media, and that has already been tarnished. So it's an additional problem, and what is required, in my view, is that people become educated about the UFO subject, realize it's a serious subject, and realize there's a lot of interesting information out there that they can educate themselves about. And that's partly why we made Out of the Blue, to do that. If you think that the main function of the military is to protect the country and to protect the citizens who live in that country, and you then consider that UFOs are advanced technology that we don't know very much about and that are entering airspace at will and are interfering with nuclear facilities and all sorts of things really, and that the military can't stop that, they can't prevent it, then you can see how much of a national security concern UFOs actually are and why they should be classified at such a high level. It's not something the military really want to talk about, and certainly no government will admit openly that they cannot protect their citizens against a threat that they don't fully understand. It's not something they want to come out openly and admit. And I think that's one of the principal reasons behind UFO secrecy. The most important point to make is that people have a right to know this. I mean, this is a terribly important subject. Unlike the sort of usual representation of the UFO subject, which is surrounded by ridicule, when you talk about it, people start giggling and smiling and looking uncomfortable. The reality is that here we have a situation where an extraterrestrial intelligence is visiting and has been visiting Earth for quite some time and is coming here in a really advanced and remarkable technology. What we can learn from this situation, potentially, is enormous. I'm often asked by people, if UFOs are real, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? Or why don't they land in the middle of the Super Bowl or something like that, you know, where everybody can see them? The simple answer to that is they just don't want to. You know, I mean, they have their own agenda. And if you place, you know, it's very difficult to start speculating about why extraterrestrials are doing what they do. That's a very dangerous game. But I think it's quite easy to sort of say that for them to operate and do whatever they want to do, their investigations, I think it's sort of reconnaissance or whatever it is they're up to, they want to do it fairly stealthily. They don't want to attract much attention. They want to go about their business without being fired on or, you know, attracting any undue attention. That seems to me fairly logical. So the idea of making their presence known in a spectacular way doesn't make any sense.